The Harrington mansion stood silent on the outskirts of New Haven, wrapped in ivy, marble, and a stillness that was almost suffocating. Once filled with laughter, music, and the soft patter of children's feet, the house now echoed with nothing but silence and the occasional heart-wrenching cries of two toddlers, who couldn't understand where their mother had gone, or why the world suddenly felt colder. Michael Harrington, one of the country's most successful tech entrepreneurs, sat in his study at 2:46 a.m., fingers pressed to his temples, eyes bloodshot. The blue glow of a muted baby monitor screen showed the twin cribs. Liam was awake again, crying, writhing, calling for a presence he could no longer feel. Lily was curled in a fetal position, her tiny hands gripping the corner of a blanket that still smelled faintly like her mother. It had been 6 months since Evelyn, Michael's wife, the love of his life, the mother of his children, had died in a car accident on her way to pick up baby formula. The irony crushed him every day. A billionaire, yet powerless to prevent the one tragedy that mattered most. His wealth could buy the most advanced technology in the world, but it couldn't undo fate. And worse, it couldn't help his children. Sleep through the night. Michael had tried everything. He hired the best child therapists in the state, sleep experts. Even a baby sleep coach from Los Angeles who charged $12,000 for a weekend. None of them lasted. The twins were too young to understand words, but too old to forget the arms that used to rock them. Each night they cried, not out of hunger or fear, but out of absence. A mother's absence that no amount of logic or scheduling could replace. The staff began to talk quietly behind his back. The housekeeper whispered to the chef, "Maybe they need a mother, not a manager." The butler, Jameson, once loyal for 15 years, offered his resignation quietly, saying, "Sir, this house is a grave now. The children feel it." Michael didn't argue. He knew it. He could feel it too. Every nanny he hired, some with Ivy League backgrounds, others with military-like routines, failed to last more than 10 days. One left crying after Liam threw a wooden block at her head. Another quit after Lily bit her arm and screamed until she passed out from exhaustion. The house was falling apart, not from neglect, but from grief that had no words. One rainy morning, after yet another sleepless night, Michael stood at the kitchen counter, coffee untouched, eyes hollow. His assistant, Natalie, placed a folder in front of him. "This came in late last night," she said softly. "It's different from the others." He opened it lazily, expecting another glossy resume with a photo of a perfect smile and 10 bullet points about child development. Instead, it was a plain, single-page application. No photo. No fancy formatting. Just a name. Grace Thomas, age, 51, experience, 29 years caring for children, primarily in underserved communities. References, 2 handwritten letters. One from a school principal in Detroit, the other from a nurse in South Carolina, and then a short personal note typed at the bottom. Greater than, "I don't teach children how to sleep. I listen to them. I don't manage behavior. I understand the heart that drives it. If your children need someone who'll follow manuals, I'm not her. But if they need peace, I might be able to help." Grace Thomas. Michael read that line again. Then again. He didn't know why, but something about it felt different. He looked up at Natalie. "Does she even have credentials?" Natalie hesitated. "Not the kind we're used to, sir. But her references are real. And there's something about her. I called the principal," he cried, "said she raised more kids in his community than their actual parents." Michael sighed. "Bring her in." He didn't expect much, but the universe had just turned a page. The morning Grace Thomas arrived. The sky was an overcast gray, soft light spilling across the marble driveway as the black town car rolled in slowly, silently, like it didn't want to disturb the silence inside. The estate's iron gates had seen royalty, politicians, and billionaires walk through, but today it opened for a woman in a navy coat, simple black shoes, and a warm face etched with years of quiet wisdom. Michael stood in the upstairs hall, watching through the tall window as she stepped out. There was no glamour, no suitcase, no assistant trailing behind. Just her. And a small leather bag that looked more like it carried memories than belongings. The butler, Jameson, opened the door with practiced formality, but there was a pause, just half a second, where his eyebrows rose ever so slightly. Grace gave a nod and a soft "thank you," walking past him as if she had been there before, as if she knew the hallway's echo and the way the floorboards creaked in that one spot. By the staircase, inside the house was cold. Not by temperature, but by energy. The air was thick, as if sadness had settled into the very furniture. Grace didn't ask for a tour. She didn't comment on the art or the size of the house. Instead, she gently removed her coat, hung it on a hook near the pantry, and simply said, "Where are the children?" Natalie hesitated, a little thrown off. "They're upstairs, but Miss Thomas, maybe you should settle in, review their feeding schedule, and we can introduce you gradually." Grace smiled softly. "No need, I'm not here to schedule them, I'm here to meet them." She climbed the stairs slowly, her hand running along the polished banister. From the nursery, two little heads peeked out, curious, suspicious. Liam, the louder one, squinted. Lily clutched a stuffed elephant like it was a lifeline. Grace didn't speak right away. She didn't kneel, didn't clap her hands or talk in a high-pitched child voice like every other nanny had, She just sat down on the floor in the hallway, legs folded under her, and waited, not for 5 seconds, not for 1 minute. For nearly 10 full minutes, Natalie and Jameson watched, awkwardly from the corner, unsure if they should interrupt. But Grace just stayed there, calm, grounded, as if her silence was saying, "I'll be here when you're ready." Eventually, Liam stepped out. His tiny feet made soft taps on the hardwood as he came closer, holding a block in his hand like a weapon. He stood in front of her, confused. She smiled at him. Not wide. Just enough. And then she did something no one expected. She pulled a sock from her leather bag, twisted it quickly into a puppet, and in a deep, silly voice said, "Well, hello there, Commander Liam. I've been looking for you." "The blanket mission is a go?" Liam blinked. Then, like a crack in concrete, he laughed. A real laugh. Lily peeked out too, still holding her elephant. She didn't come close, but she didn't run either. Within 20 minutes, Grace had both children sitting next to her on the floor, not talking much, but leaning in. Liam even handed her the block. Michael, watching from the end of the hallway, froze. He had seen trained professionals try everything: games, charts, YouTube Kids videos, white noise apps, and yet here was this woman doing absolutely nothing. And making progress in moments. Later that evening, just before dinner, Michael walked into the nursery to find Grace reading a story not from a book, but from memory. "Once upon a time," she said gently, holding Lily in her lap, "there were 2 stars who had lost their sky. They cried every night looking for their light, until one day, someone told them they didn't have to find the sky. They could become the sky." The twins stared at her, eyes wide, quiet. Michael cleared his throat. Grace turned, smiling politely. "They'll sleep tonight," she said. "They're just waiting for permission?" "Permission?" he asked, puzzled. She nodded. "To feel safe enough to close their eyes." And just like that, she stood and tucked the children into bed, with a calmness that didn't feel rehearsed. She didn't read instructions. She didn't ask questions. She just knew. As she turned off the light, Michael noticed something. The lullaby, she was humming it, was the same one Evelyn used to sing, the exact melody. He froze. "Where did you learn that song?" he asked, a bit sharper than he meant to. Grace paused in the doorway, silhouetted by the hall light. "I didn't," she said softly. "Some song." The Harrington mansion had never felt alive since Evelyn's passing. Its polished floors, expensive chandeliers, and museum-like hallways felt more like a mausoleum than a home. But with Grace Thomas' arrival, something subtle began to change. It wasn't loud. It wasn't immediate. It was quiet magic. By the second morning, the twins had woken up not with tears, but with tiny giggles. Grace had sat between their cribs at 6 a.m., humming softly, her voice low and warm like a gentle breeze. Michael, still half asleep and unsure whether this was just beginner's luck, leaned on the doorway watching her. There was no rush in her movements. She held each child for a few moments before setting them on a large rug on the floor. She let them crawl, explore, and laugh freely instead of forcing them into a rigid schedule. For the first time in months, there were no tantrums at breakfast. The chef, accustomed to preparing elaborate toddler meals that always ended up untouched, blinked in disbelief when Liam actually finished half a bowl of oatmeal under Grace's calm encouragement. You don't force them to eat? The chef asked curiously, standing by with a tray of strawberries and yogurt. Grace smiled. You don't force a heart to trust you. You wait, and it comes to you when it's ready. Her words were simple, but carried a weight the staff didn't fully understand. By noon, the housekeeper noticed something different, too. The twins weren't clinging to the curtains or screaming when Michael left for his office. Instead, they sat on the floor with Grace, playing with nothing but wooden spoons and an old metal mixing bowl. Their laughter echoed through the hallways like sunlight breaking through clouds. Even Jameson, the stoic butler who rarely smiled, was caught leaning at the doorway, watching with something almost like admiration. She's not like the others, the housekeeper whispered later that day. It's like the children can feel something in her. Michael wasn't sure what to think. On one hand, he was relieved, desperately relieved, to see his twins laughing again. On the other, something about Grace unsettled him. She was too good, too instinctive. It was as though she already knew the children's patterns, their fears, and even the small quirks that Evelyn had always picked up on. That evening, when Michael came upstairs to check on them, he found Grace sitting cross-legged on the floor. The twins were in her lap, completely mesmerized as she told them a story not from a book, but from her memory. It's about a butterfly that forgot how to fly, she was saying softly. But one day it remembered, not because someone taught it, but because it felt the wind and knew it was time. The way she told it wasn't for children alone. Even Michael, standing silently at the door, felt something stir inside him. Later. While the children napped, Michael approached her in the kitchen where she was making herself tea. Where did you learn all this? He asked, gesturing vaguely toward the nursery. Grace looked up, her expression calm but unreadable. Children are easy to understand, Mr. Harrington, she said, stirring her tea slowly. They don't hide who they are. Adults, we're the complicated ones. Michael almost laughed, but stopped when she continued. They're not crying because they're spoiled. They're crying because the world they knew filled with their mothers. Scent, her voice, her heartbeat suddenly vanished. You can't fix that with rules or bedtime charts. You just hold space for their pain. Her words hit him like a quiet truth he hadn't wanted to hear. For months, he had tried to fix the twins, throwing money at experts, gadgets, and modern parenting techniques without realizing they didn't need a system. They needed presence. That night, Michael lingered outside their room again. The nursery light was dim, the soft hum of a lullaby floating through the air. Grace was holding both twins, one on each knee, swaying gently like a tree moving in the wind. But this time the tune she was singing froze him in place. It was Evelyn's song. Not just any song, but the exact melody Evelyn had once written for the twins before they were born, a simple hum of love and comfort. It wasn't recorded, it wasn't public. He had only ever heard Evelyn sing it once, during a quiet evening. In their old apartment, before they even moved into this mansion. Michael stepped inside, unable to hold back. Grace, he said, voice lower than he intended. How do you know that song? Grace didn't answer right away. She kept humming, gently laying Liam down into his crib and pulling the blanket over Lily. Only when both children were breathing steadily did she turn to him. Some songs, she said, her eyes soft but mysterious, don't belong to one person. They belong to whoever loves enough to hear them. Michael stood there, stunned. He didn't know if it was coincidence or something deeper. But one thing was clear, this woman wasn't just a nanny. She was something else entirely, and 4. The first time since Evelyn's death, Michael wondered if Grace's presence in their lives wasn't luck maybe, just maybe it was fate, The storm rolled in without warning, the thunder cracked the sky open like a whip, and the rain fell in sheets that blurred the mansion's windows. Inside, everything was dim, light bulbs flickered, the security system beeped from a power surge. And the generator took longer than usual to kick in, Michael was across town, stuck at a corporate gala in a glass tower, the kind of room filled with money but no real emotion. But back home in the nursery, a very different kind of drama was unfolding. The twins had started crying. Not whimpering, not fussing, but screaming, as if some invisible wave of fear had swept through them both at once. Lightning lit up the nursery for a second, casting shadows that danced across the walls. The power had gone out, and the emergency nightlight hadn't activated. Grace ran upstairs barefoot, no hesitation. No flashlight. No panic. She moved as if she knew every creak of the staircase, every corner of the house. The twins were sobbing when she burst into the room, but she didn't speak. Instead, she went to them, sat between their cribs, and pulled them both into her arms. I've got you, she whispered, over and over, and then she did something strange. She didn't sing a lullaby or tell a story. She began to hum something different, low, rhythmic, like a chant. It was soft but powerful, a blend of African roots and something almost spiritual, a language that wasn't quite English, wasn't quite melody, but something in between. It was, ancient. The twins stopped crying instantly. Lily clutched her elephant and pressed her cheek against Grace's shoulder. Liam let out a shaky breath and buried his face into her chest. The rain continued to slam against the windows, but inside that room it was as if time had paused. The rhythm of Grace's voice seemed to place a protective barrier around them, something beyond human understanding. That's when Michael walked in. His suit was soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead. He had rushed back the moment the power outage alert came through his phone. What he saw when he opened the nursery door stopped him cold. Grace was sitting on the floor, the twins asleep in her arms, her eyes closed, rocking slightly as if she were in a trance, and in her lap was something that made his breath catch in his throat, a silver heart-shaped locket. It was Evelyn's. He had given it to her on their 5th anniversary. She wore it every day. It had been missing since the accident. Michael had searched the wreckage, torn through boxes, questioned staff, nothing. No one had seen it, and now here it was, resting in the palm of this woman's hand. He stepped forward. Where did you get that? Grace looked up slowly, calm, composed. Her fingers closed gently over the locket. It was given to me, she said. By who? Michael demanded, his voice rising. That belonged to my wife. Grace didn't flinch. She stood still, holding the twins. Her voice didn't waver. By your wife. Silence. The storm outside seemed to hush, waiting. Michael stared at her. What are you talking about? Grace took a deep breath. Before she passed, years ago, Evelyn asked me to be here, not as a nanny, not as a replacement, but as a promise kept. Michael shook his head. That's not possible. She never mentioned you. She wouldn't have, Grace said quietly, because she didn't need to. We met long before this mansion, before the twins, before your first IPO. She was just Evelyn, then volunteering at the Shady Pines nursing home where I was taking care of your mother. Michael's knees felt weak. You cared for my mother? Grace nodded. For 4 years, Evelyn would come in every week. Not for press, not for photos, just to help. We became close. She told me things, shared her fears, her dreams. And one day she said, if anything ever happens to me, I want you to be the one who watches over what I love most. She stepped closer and held out the locket. She left this with me, said I'd know when the time was right. Michael took it with trembling hands. He opened the locket. Inside was a photo of Evelyn cradling the newborn twins. On the opposite side, in tiny cursive, was engraved, asterisk greater than if I can't be there. Let her be my arms, asterisk his vision blurred. The grief he'd buried under work, structure, and control came rushing back all at once. But beneath it was something else, just, asterisk, he looked at Grace, really looked at her. Not just as a caretaker. Not as staff, asterisk, but as someone who had been placed there by love, Evelyn's love. A woman he had loved so deeply had somehow, in her quiet way, made sure that even in her absence, the children would be safe, and he would not be alone. The next morning, the storm had passed, but the air still carried the weight of everything that had been said. Asterisk Michael didn't sleep that night. He sat alone in the sunroom, Evelyn's locket, resting in his palm, watching the sky slowly shift from black to the pale orange of dawn. Every now and then, he'd glance at the hallway, where the nursery door stood closed. But the memory of Grace's voice and Evelyn's name still echoed in his ears. Asterisk, he thought of how Grace had held the twins. Asterisk, how she had known the lullaby. Asterisk, how she had spoken Evelyn's name, not with grief, but with reverence. Asterisk, it was as if some part of Evelyn had sent her, not metaphorically, not spiritually, but deliberately. As if Grace had been planted into their lives like a living will, no papers, no contracts. Just love. At 7 a.m., he stood in the nursery doorway again. Liam and Lily were fast asleep, each in their cribs. The sunlight pooled through the curtains, washing over them in gold. Grace sat in the rocker between them, sipping tea. She looked up and offered a small nod, no words, no smile. Just calm awareness. Asterisk Michael stepped in, walked over slowly, and crouched next to her. Asterisk. I read Evelyn's message in the locket again, he whispered. Every word. Asterisk Grace said nothing. She simply placed her hand gently over his. Asterisk my wife was the planner, he continued. She always thought 10 years ahead. I never imagined she'd think this far. His voice cracked slightly. And now I understand why the children responded to you, why I did too. He looked up into Grace's steady, kind eyes. You're not just a nanny, he said. You're her echo, her answer. Asterisk Grace looked down at the children. I never wanted to replace her. I couldn't. No one can. But I promised her I'd stay until they stopped needing me. Asterisk Michael shook his head. They'll always need you, and so will I. Later that day he called a meeting. The chef, the butler, the assistant, even the landscaper and the night guard were present in the living room. Grace stood quietly in the back, assuming this had nothing to do with her. Asterisk, but Michael stepped forward, holding Evelyn's locket like a seal. Asterisk. I want to thank all of you, he said, for being patient through this time, for not walking away. But there's one person here who saved my family. He turned. Grace! Asterisk, everyone looked her way. She stood still, unsure if she was supposed to speak. Asterisk Michael continued. She didn't come here for money or titles. She came here out of a promise, one that was never written, only felt. And today I want to honor that. He paused. She's not staff anymore. She's family. A beat of silence. Then, for the first time since Evelyn's death, the room filled with applause, not polite, but real. The kind that comes from respect, and gratitude. Asterisk Liam toddled in holding a toy, and without hesitation walked straight to Grace. Lily followed, rubbing her eyes, reaching up instinctively. Grace knelt, embraced them both, and whispered something no one else could hear. Asterisk from that day on, the house changed completely. Asterisk Grace didn't just live in the guest wing. Michael renovated a whole section of the house for her, with a private study, a sunroom, and a garden she could tend to in the evenings. Asterisk Liam and Lily began to thrive. Their speech developed faster, their behavior softened. The staff said they glowed differently now, as if something sacred had returned. Michael, too, changed. He took fewer business trips, ate dinner at the same table with his children, laughed again, not because life became easier, but because he wasn't carrying it alone anymore. Asterisk one afternoon, months later, Michael found an old photo tucked into one of Evelyn's boxes. An old Black and white snapshot of a much younger Grace sitting beside Evelyn in a hospital waiting room, both smiling like sisters. Written on the back in Evelyn's handwriting, asterisk, if anything happens to me, give them to Grace. She's not a caretaker. She's their inheritance. He framed it and placed it in the nursery. Years passed, asterisk, the twins would later grow up, knowing they had two mothers, asterisk, one who gave them life, and one who gave them peace, asterisk, and when people asked them how they turned out so kind, so grounded despite wealth and loss, they would smile and answer, asterisk, because we were raised by love. And love never left.